So wanted to update you guys on an important development with regard to the veracity of the story of the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation whistleblower, Anthony Aguilar, former Green Beret, who spoke with us last week. So a key part of his testimony was about a child named Amir, who he saw at one of the aid distribution sites. And Amir really struck a chord with him because he approached him after having scrounged some meager rations off of the ground. And he wanted to say thank you to him in English. Aguilar said that he, grabbed his face and kissed his hands in gratitude for these meager rations that he was able to literally scrounge off the ground. And then shortly thereafter, the IDF fired, as they typically do, on Palestinians who were leaving the aid site, and Aguilar saw Amir dead on the ground, having been killed by the IDF. So the GHF has put out a number of statements trying to call into question Anthony's testimony, and specifically about Amir. They put on a photo of what appeared to be a completely different child on a different day and say, oh, here is Amir. He was fine. Here he is being happy. Well, we now have an update from Middle East Eye, who were able to actually track down the family of Amir and to try to discover, okay, well, is he fine? Is he there in your care? Or what happened to him? We can put this up on the screen. They were able to identify the family, and the family says that he is missing. They have searched for him extensively. They've looked in all the hospitals. They've looked in all the morgues. They've gone to humanitarian organizations like the Red Cross. They have found absolutely no trace of him. The last time anyone has seen him alive is as pictured in those photos that Anthony Aguilar took. So really lending credibility to his story here, and obviously an absolute horror that this child was in all likelihood murdered, and then God even knows what has happened to his body. So in addition to that update, we wanted to bring in Jasper Nathaniel, who's a fantastic journalist. He writes over at Infinite Jazz on Substack, and he's been tracking really closely a lot of developments with regard to Israel, Gaza, and specifically the West Bank, which we want to get to in a moment. But first of all, just welcome, Jasper. Great to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have a piece up at Drop Site, which really fits hand in glove with the story about Amir and what's happening at these GHF sites. We can put this up on the screen, where you dig into the way that this is really an information warfare and PR op. This has really nothing to do with aid distribution at all, which anyone who watches the show probably already knows that these are death traps where starving Palestinians are lured in and then indiscriminately shot on the way in and on the way out. But what specifically did you discover about the way that GHF operates?
Yeah, I think that the big picture thing to keep in mind is that humanitarian work is a technical discipline. People go to school for a long time to study it. Obviously, there's a science to famine and famine relief. Mm-hmm. And people who run humanitarian organizations have a set of guidelines based on this, and ethical guidelines as well that are meant to prioritize the people who need the aid and the relief. The Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, simply put, does not have any experts in humanitarian aid as part of it. It is run by basically mercenaries, intelligence operatives, ex-CIA people, and the most generous reading, I would say, if we assume that it was not actually meant to be killing hundreds and hundreds of people every week and starving the entire Gaza Strip, the most generous reading would be that it's an intelligence gathering operation. But it's just simply not there to feed the people, because if it was, they would have experts in humanitarian relief working for it, but they just don't. So that's the sort of high level, I would say.
So the furthermore that we want to get with you, Jasper, just kind of going down this road, is what's going on in the West Bank. Can we put F3, please, up on the screen? This is something that you've been writing about for now quite some time. Quote, the annexation of the West Bank is complete. With eyes on Gaza, Israel has quietly annexed the West Bank. We have covered the vote in the Israeli Knesset about this, but give us some of the concrete stuff that you point to that shows the actual annexation at a political and law enforcement level.
So the military occupation of the West Bank it's an actual legal designation that is aligned with international law based on the Geneva Convention and Hague. And there are laws that the military occupation nominally has to adhere to. And the laws effectively say everything that's done as part of the military occupation has to be in the best interest of the occupied people. And nothing can be designed to, put roots in the ground by the occupiers. Now, I don't want to give off the impression that the military occupation was is benevolent or is anything other than just cruel and barbaric. Mm-hmm. Said that, it did, in a weird way, provide sort of insulation between the occupied people and the settler movement, mm-hmm. which is, ideological and messianic and wants nothing more than to just take over the territory. So what I mean by that is take somebody like Smotrich, the finance minister. Smotrich grew up in a settlement. He lives in a settlement today. He was, not that long ago, one of the people that you see running around the hills in a mask, throwing rocks, setting fires to Palestinian villages. And now he is the finance minister. So when he came into power in February at the end of, or in the beginning of 2023, he made a deal with the defense secretary, Yoav Gallant. And what that deal did was he installed himself inside the Defense Department, Smotrich did. And then he built what is effectively a shadow government inside the Defense Department, made up entirely of people with his same ideology, with settlers. Mm-hmm. And they basically rerouted every decision that the military occupation made to this new civilian chain of command. And in doing that, they've been able to get rid of every single potential obstacle or hurdle on building settlements, on demolishing Palestinian villages. And again, it's not to say that the military had the best interest of the Palestinian people in mind, but they were on an ideological level more concerned with keeping order and brutalizing the people, I would say, as opposed to the settlers who have just a sort of pure messianic vision of claiming Judea and Samaria on its own. So all that said, already, well before October 7th, there was a fundamental change in the way the West Bank is governed that allowed settlement building to just run wild. And then October 7th happens, and Smotrich, I think it's fair to say, immediately recognizes an opportunity to frame everything that they're doing as security. So he starts conflating the Palestinian Authority with Hamas. He starts really doubling down on this idea that settlers have been pushing for a long time, that the West Bank or the settlers in the West Bank are Israel's bulletproof vest, who are protecting Israel proper from all the supposed barbarians east of the Green Line. Settlers love to say, October 7th never could have happened from here because we would have stopped it. And so it goes from just being, they cleared all the bureaucratic hurdles to be able to build settlements. Now they have this idea of security on their side. Part of that also is actually telling the police and the IDF to stop enforcing laws on settlers. So settlers are now allowed to build illegal outposts anywhere they want. They are virtually never arrested when they do these pogroms and terrorize people. Literally today, there is video of Yinon Levy, the settler who shot a Palestinian activist dead 1 week ago. He's back in the village today.
Right.
He's in al-Khair today, continuing to build the settlement, continuing to terrorize the people. I'm not so sure that would have happened 2 years ago. And again, I can't emphasize enough, things were not good 2 years ago, but now just all the rules are gone.
Let me read a little bit from your piece because I think it's extraordinary. You say, annexation is for all intents and purposes complete. Since Trump's re-election, reportedly bankrolled in part by a $100 million donation from Miriam Adelson in exchange for backing annexation, Smotrich has grown more confident, calling 2025 the year of sovereignty in Judea and Samaria. He's built a close relationship with U.S. Ambassador Mike Huckabee, who once said there was no such thing as a Palestinian, and Smotrich has declared they are now raising the flag of building and settling rather than hiding and apologizing. So when you say annexation is for all intents and purposes complete, what specifically do you mean by that?
So the the green line that ostensibly separates Israel from the occupied West Bank, that separation, there's a wall, of course, but also the separation is that there are laws in Israel that apply to Israel that legally cannot apply to the West Bank because it's not part of Israel proper. There have been a series of policy initiatives that have flown right through the Knesset that have taken the laws in Israel and applied them to the West Bank. And so in doing that, if you take all the laws of Israel and apply them to the occupied territory, if you take all the restrictions off of settlers from being able to build wherever they want, from being able to demolish wherever they want, at a certain point, what exactly is not Israel about this place?
Right.
Nothing. And so I think that Smotrich, he doesn't use the word annexation. I've noticed I think that he is aware that he doesn't need to, say officially, we've annexed the West Bank to get everything he wants, which is full control over the West Bank, and an increasingly effective effort to basically ethnically cleanse the parts of the land that the settlers are encroaching on.
Mm-hmm. And why does this matter in terms of what's happening in Gaza, you think?
Well, I think that it matters on a moral and ethical level, of course, but also I think it's worth saying that this idea of a Palestinian state or a two-state solution is really it's built on the notion that there's a state in the West Bank for the Palestinians, and I think that the idea that is the sort of practical thinking man's solution to the conflict. It's just as Palestinians lose any, sovereignty or power that they have in the West Bank, and Israel takes over more and more of it, and the Palestinians are confined into smaller and smaller Bantustans. It is just so obvious that there is no physical state that could be possible for the Palestinians to have there. So I think it matters on that sort of legal and diplomatic level, but it also, on a rhetorical level, let's say, it just completely wipes away the idea that what Israel is doing in Gaza is about eradicating Hamas, because Hamas is not in the West Bank. There may be a handful of operatives, but the West Bank, to the extent that it has militant groups, they are underground. They're not associated with the Palestinian Authority or with the government in any way. Most of the towns that the settlers are taking over, that soldiers are encroaching on, don't even have armed resistance. And so when they're bombing schools and hospitals and homes in Gaza, and they're saying, oh, there was a Hamas operative there, they don't have that same excuse in the West Bank. And it brings into stark clarity, this is about ethnic cleansing. There's simply no other justification for what they're doing there.
Yeah, and quite the opposite. The PA are basically collaborators. So, they're supposed to be the moderates, and they have basically done whatever the Israelis want them to do. And even that, then they get conflated as Hamas.
Right.
So the idea, that's all often offered of like, well, if the Palestinians just lay down their arms and try to negotiate, I think that is fundamentally disproven also by what is unfolding right now in the West Bank. I'd love your reflections on that, but also I wanted to get your reaction to, we covered earlier in the show, and I don't know if you've seen this yet, U.S. Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, who is in Israel, became the highest ranking U.S. official, I believe, ever to visit one of these illegal settlements. What do you see as the significance of that?
Yeah, I saw that just before I came on. He's at the Ariel settlement, which is in the north, what the settlers call Samaria. Well, the significance is that, the Trump government, as they did in the first term too, are just fully on board with annexing the West Bank. You said in the excerpt that you read that there was a $100 million donation that allegedly was in support of annexation. Mike Johnson said something in his speech, literally, minutes or hours ago that I read, where he said, Judea and Samaria legally belongs to Israel. And I just want to say that it doesn't. Literally, it doesn't. There is no law in the world that would suggest, what they call Judea and Samaria, which is the land of the West Bank, belongs to Israel. Quite literally, it belongs to the Palestinians, and Israel is just occupying it. So, they have just taken the mask off that they even care about a rules-based order. And, they're just fully supportive of annexing the West Bank. I think, for somebody like Mike Johnson or Mike Huckabee, these are evangelical Zionists who have, their own messianic vision and prophecy for why they need all the Jews to return to Israel. It has nothing to do with actually caring about Jewish people. Certainly they don't care about Palestinian people. So it's just totally cynical. But frankly, the settlers will take any allies they can get. Yep. Especially those who are high up in the U.S. government.
Well said, Jasper.
Yeah. One last question for you, Jasper. There's a bit of a liberal fantasy here that, if we just got this bad Netanyahu government out of here, then, things could return to quote unquote normal, whatever that was, in Israel and with regard to the Israeli-American relationship. What are your reflections on that?
Well, just again, focusing on the West Bank, because I think it's a good example of where the October 7th can't be used as an excuse. I just wrote a piece on my Substack yesterday called the Violent Settlers Are Just Doing Their Job. And what I mean by that is every single part of Israel's institutions, from the federal government to the courts to the sort of various political entities to the just general support or apathy from the population, is supporting the settlers in what they're doing, in their ethnic cleansing, in their violence, in their killing. And so, if you want to say that it is just Netanyahu, then you would have to also acknowledge, well, then Netanyahu's ideology has completely swept through every single institution that matters in Israel. But of course, it's not just Netanyahu. I mean, this is, much more deeply ingrained in people who just, have utterly dehumanized Palestinians. And it just, it's alarming that anybody would even suggest that the settlement movement is fringe anymore, because the settlement movement is actually central to Israel. It's central to the Zionist project, and the proof is in the pudding. I mean, it's not very hard to see how that violent movement has support across the board.
Yeah,
I totally agree with you.
Jasper, tell people where they can find your work and where they can support you.
Yeah, thank you. My Substack is just Infinite Jazz, just one Z, Jaz. And then I see you smiling. I can,
I get the reference. Yeah, it's a good reference. Yeah.
My Twitter is also Infinite Jazz with 2 underscores, and I think on Instagram, Infinite Jazz 1_. Also, you could just search Jasper Nathaniel, and you should be able to find my work. But
yeah, we'll put the links in the description as well for people.
Okay,
Thanks,
great. Thank you so much for bringing attention to the West Bank, because it's criminally undercovered in the mainstream media, and it's so important to talk about what's happening there.
Yeah, I think it really does create the full picture, even under these questions of genocide, when you see, it's not just what's going on in the Gaza Strip where you've got the but Hamas excuse. This is an across-the-board policy. So thank you for helping us to connect those dots, Jasper. Great to see you.
Good to see you, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Take care.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.